The mediation room smelled of old carpet and something else. Something that had been sitting too long without a window. Lena Whitmore sat in the chair they had put her in, not the one at the table, the one against the wall, and pressed both hands against the curve of her belly. 8 months. 8 months of carrying a person who did not yet have a word for the pressure she felt in this room. The paper sat on the table in front of her. She had already read it twice. The language was long and deliberate and designed to look like an agreement when it was actually a surrender. Sign here, and the compensation from Elias Whitmore's workplace death would pass to his estate, which, by the family's accounting, meant his parents, which, by the family's accounting, meant not her. Margaret Whitmore sat across the room in a dark coat with a silver brooch at the collar. She had not offered Lena a seat at the table. She had not offered her water. She had arranged the room with the precision of someone who understood that comfort is a form of power, and she had given Lena neither. "We've been waiting 3 months," Margaret said. "The compensation has been held up long enough. Sign the paper, Lena, and this is over." Lena looked at the document, then at her hands, then at the window behind Margaret's head. "The compensation is for Elias's dependents," she said. "That includes the baby." Grant Whitmore, seated to his mother's right, exhaled with the patience of a man who had been performing patience for some time, and was nearly done with it. "Elias is gone," Grant said. "A child who never met his father cannot inherit grief." Lena did not respond to that. Grant leaned forward. "Sign it, Lena. That baby has already cost this family enough." She looked at him then. "I am not asking for pity," she said. "I am asking you not to steal from his child." Margaret spoke before Grant could answer. Her voice was calm in the way that very sharp things are calm before they cut. "That baby is not an heir, Lena. It is a burden wearing my son's name." The room did not react. The family lawyer at the end of the table did not look up from his notepad. The mediator, who was supposed to be neutral, stared at a point slightly above Lena's head. No one said anything, and Lena understood, with the particular clarity of someone who has been alone in a room full of people before, that she was going to leave this room without the paper signed, and that this was going to cost her something. The courthouse hallway was long and high-ceilinged and full of people who had somewhere to be. Lena walked slowly, because there was no other way to walk with 8 months of weight in front of her and nothing solid to hold on to. She had not eaten since the morning. She had drunk half a bottle of water in the car. She had been in that room for 2.5 hours. The doors behind her pushed open, and Grant's voice followed her into the corridor. "You will regret this. There are ways to make this harder for you." She kept walking. She got as far as the top of the steps outside. The cold hit her all at once. February in this city was not gradual, and her vision went sideways, and the steps came up to meet her faster than she expected. Someone caught her before she hit the stone. She didn't see who. She heard a voice say, "Someone call a doctor. She's 8 months pregnant." And then the voice was closer, steadying her, and she was being lowered to the top step, and someone was holding her shoulders. When her vision steadied, she looked at the man crouched in front of her. Dark coat, quiet eyes, the particular stillness of a man who was accustomed to rooms going silent when he entered them. "Stay still," he said. It was not a request. Behind him, Margaret and Grant had appeared in the doorway. Margaret's expression was not concern. It was calculation. "She's always been dramatic," Margaret said to no one in particular. The man in front of Lena turned his head. He looked at Margaret with an expression that had no drama in it at all, which was somehow worse. "Is that the widow?" he asked. Grant said, "She's the wife of Elias Whitmore, our brother." The man turned back. Something had shifted in his face. A very small thing, almost nothing. "What did you say his name was?" Roman Vale. Had been at the courthouse because a commercial dispute had landed in the wrong courtroom, and his lawyer needed him visible. He had not come for drama. He had not come to be useful to strangers. He had seen the pregnant woman in the hallway because his path had taken him past the mediation wing, and she had been walking toward the doors with the particular determination of someone holding themselves together very carefully. He had looked at her and looked away. Family cruelty was not his business. He had continued toward the elevator, and then he heard the sound she made when her legs gave out, and he turned back before he had decided to, and that was the part of the afternoon he had not planned for. He had her seated on the steps, and her breathing was evening out when the family followed her into the corridor. He had dismissed them. He had been about to stand and leave her to the ambulance that was already being called. And then Grant Whitmore had said the name, Elias. It was not a common name. Roman had heard it only once before. He had been 10 years old. A narrow alley in the old district. 2 men who had followed his uncle's car, and when things had gone wrong, Roman had run and gotten himself turned around in the dark. He remembered the moment the footsteps caught up to him. He remembered the wall of the building against his back, and then a hand had appeared from somewhere to his left, pulling him through a gap he hadn't seen, and a voice had said, "Run when I say run, kid, and don't look back." The boy who pulled him into hiding had been older. 17, maybe. He had pushed Roman into the gap behind a water tank and positioned himself in front of it. There had been a sound. Roman had not looked. He had run when the voice told him to run. He had made it to the street. He had never gone back. He had told himself for 20 years that he would find the person who had helped him. He had no name. He had a memory of a dark jacket, a cut along the forearm, and the voice saying, as Roman ran, "If I ever have a son, I'll name him Elias, after my father." Roman had carried that sentence for 20 years and never known what to do with it. What was her husband's name? He said now, to no one specific, his full name. Grant said, "Elias Whitmore. What does it matter to you?" Roman looked at the woman on the steps. Her eyes were open now. She was looking at him with the guarded exhaustion of someone who has been surprised too many times by people with intentions. "What are you naming the baby?" Roman asked her. Lena blinked. "Elias," she said. His father deserved to have his name carried by someone who loved him. Roman was very still for a moment. Then he said, to Nolan beside him, "Get the car, she's going to the hospital." The hospital was not a discussion. Roman Vale did not make many things discussions, and this was one of them. He did not explain himself to the Whitmore family, who stood in the courthouse lobby and watched a woman they had spent months pressuring be walked into a private car by a man whose name made city councilman check, who was watching before they took his calls. "She is not signing anything while she can barely stand," Roman said, to no one in the lobby who was looking for an argument. He did not make Lena sign anything. He did not tell her she owed him. He sat in the car across from her and said nothing for most of the drive. It was Lena who spoke first. "Why are you doing this?" "I need to ask you some questions about your husband." "That's not an answer." "No," Roman said. "It isn't." She looked at him. "My baby is not another debt for powerful men to collect." "I know. Do you?" He met her eyes. "If I wanted ownership, I would have let the Whitmores have it." They're much better at that than I am. The doctor at the hospital said Lena was dehydrated and exhausted, and the baby was fine, and she needed to eat something and rest. Roman was in the corridor when Lena came out, still pulling on her coat. She stopped. "You're still here." I said I had questions. "You could have left a number." "I could have." She looked at him for a moment. Then she sat down in the plastic chair beside the nurse's station and said, "What do you want to know?" Roman sat in the chair across from her. He did not know how to begin, so he began the only way he knew how. From the fact. 20 years ago, a young man pulled a 10-year-old boy out of an alley when two men with bad intentions were very close. The boy got away. The young man disappeared. I have been looking for him since. Lena was very still. "The boy was you," she said. Roman said nothing. "Elias," she said, very quietly. "He grew up in the old district. He never talked about it much. But once, when we were first together, he told me he'd done something when he was young that he hoped God was keeping track of." She stopped. Something moved across her face. "He said he'd helped a child get away from some dangerous men. He was worried about it for years. He always said he hoped the boy had been okay." Roman looked at his hands. He had survived a great many things in 20 years. This was not the hardest of them, but it sat in a different place. "He was okay," Roman said. "He grew up fine." Lena looked at him for a long moment. "I need to know if you're going to use this," she said. "The connection, the story. I have a baby who needs protection, not a patron. I understand the difference. I'm not sure you do. I've been in rooms full of people who thought protecting something meant owning it." Roman said, "I spent 20 years owing my life to a ghost. I'm not looking for a new way to collect. I'm looking for the one way I was never able to give back." Lena did not answer immediately. She reached into her coat pocket and brought out something small, a folded piece of cloth. Old, dark blue cotton, worn at the edges. A worker's bandana, the kind Elias had carried everywhere. "He had this with him in the hospital," she said. "They gave it to me with his things." Roman took it. He opened it slowly. There was a small cut in the upper left corner, a repair sewn by hand. He had made that cut. He had done it himself, in the dark of that alley, cutting a strip to tie around the forearm of the boy who had pulled him to safety. The boy had kept the cloth. He had carried it for 20 years. Roman folded it again. "Where did you get this?" Lena asked. "He used it to wrap my hand," Roman said. "The night he helped me. His arm was bleeding, and he wrapped my hand instead and told me to run." Lena closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were very clear. "What do you want to do?" "Find out what actually happened to him," Roman said. "Because that report from the construction site is wrong, and I think you know it." Vale had been Roman's investigator for 6 years. She could read a falsified safety report in the time it took most people to find the page number. She called Roman from the Harlan Construction Site Files Archive at 11:30 at night. "This report is too clean," she said. "Worker fatality reports have corrections, amendments, witness disagreements. This has none. 3 pages. Consistent language throughout, 0 revisions. Someone wrote it after they knew how they wanted it to look. That's my read. And there's more." A pause. Elias Whitmore was not the only worker who raised concerns about the north scaffold that month. There were 2 others. Both transferred to different sites within the week. Roman sat in the car outside the hospital, and the camera footage. Main system was wiped. There's a 17-minute gap the night Elias died. But Harlan's insurance provider required a secondary backup system for the policy discount. It's on a separate server. I requested it this morning through the insurance provider's legal office. We should have it by Thursday. What about the Whitmore family connection? Mara sent a file to his phone. Roman opened it. A payment record. Grant Whitmore, Harlan Construction, $43,000, paid in 2 installments over the 6 weeks following Elias's death. The memo line said consulting fees. He consulted on what? Roman said. Nothing, Mara said. There is no consulting contract, no work product, no communication trail. The payments went out, the services don't exist. Roman looked at the numbers. They paid him to keep Lena from filing. That's the most likely reading. If Lena had gone to court immediately, the discovery process would have pulled these files. They needed her to sign and walk away. She didn't. No, Mara said. She didn't. Lena told Roman about the north scaffold on a Tuesday afternoon in the safe apartment Roman had arranged. She had agreed to stay. She had been direct about the terms. I'm not a guest, she had said. I'm not protected property. If I want to leave, I leave. Roman had placed the key on the table. The door stays unlocked. Protection is not ownership. She had looked at him for a moment. Then she had taken the key. On Tuesday, she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold and told him what Elias had come home saying in the weeks before he died. He didn't tell me much, she said, but he always repeated the things he was afraid I'd need later. He kept talking about the north scaffold. He said the load calculations were wrong. He said he'd reported it twice, and both times the report disappeared. Did he say who he'd reported it to? His site foreman, and then directly to the site safety officer, a man named Cruz. She paused. I looked him up after Elias died. Cruz transferred to a different company 10 days before the accident. Roman said, "Do you still have the messages? The texts? Emails?" The phone broke in the accident. But I wrote down everything he told me in those weeks. I was afraid of losing it. She looked at him. I didn't know why I was afraid. I just was. Roman had learned, over many years, to take seriously the things careful people were afraid of losing. He didn't tell you much, he said, but he always repeated the things he was afraid you'd need later. Lena looked at him. He was protecting me, she said quietly. Even then, that night, Mara sent the backup footage. It was dark and the resolution was poor, but it was clear enough. Elias Whitmore had not walked into the restricted zone. He had been running toward the north scaffold from the east entrance. Behind him, 3 other figures, moving with the deliberate coordination of people who had done this before. Elias had reached the scaffold. He had looked back. He had not been careless. He had been chased. Roman watched the footage twice. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "He saved my life once. I will not let his child be erased twice." That night, Victor Harlan called. His voice was polished, corporate, practiced. The voice of a man who understood that tone was its own kind of pressure. "Construction accidents happen, Mr. Vale." Roman looked at the frozen image on the screen. Elias running, the men behind him. "Accidents do not come with 17 missing minutes," Roman said. A pause moved through the line. Then Harlan said, "You are putting a widow and her unborn child in the middle of something they will not survive." Roman's voice did not change. "No, you did that when you buried her husband under a clean report." Another pause. Longer. "You protect your empire," Harlan said. "I'll protect mine." Roman ended the call. He sat for a moment in the dark of the office. Then he called Mara. "Widen the search. I want every worker transfer, every safety report, every payment record going back 5 years. He thinks this is about one widow." He looked at the screen. He hasn't understood yet what it's about. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday in March. Lena wore a coat that no longer buttoned across the front. She had her notes in a folder. She had Mara's compiled evidence in a second folder. She had the bandana in her coat pocket. Roman came with her to the courthouse. He stood in the corridor outside the hearing room while she reviewed her notes. "I'll go in with you," he said. "I can say." "No," Lena said. He looked at her. "If you silence them with fear, they will say I was lying." She met his eyes steadily. "I need the truth louder than their shame. This has to be me." Roman said nothing. Then he said, "All right, wait here," she said, "and don't come in unless I fall down." "I'll stay in the corridor," he said. She looked at the door. Then she pushed it open and went through. The hearing room was small and official and full of people who expected Lena Whitmore to be as easy to manage here as she had been in the mediation room 2 months ago. Margaret sat at one table in another dark coat. Grant sat beside her with the look of a man who had done some preparation. Victor Harlan's attorney was present, which was itself information. The construction company had enough to protect that they had sent representation. Lena sat down and opened her folder. The first 20 minutes belonged to the Whitmore family's counsel. He described Elias's workplace conduct. He described the report. He used the words negligence and unauthorized entry with the confident rhythm of someone who had practiced them. Then Lena spoke. She did not raise her voice. She did not perform grief. She had learned, from watching this family operate for 2 months, that performance was their language, and she did not want to speak it. Elias Whitmore reported the north scaffold to his foreman on 2 separate occasions, she said. Both reports were lost. The site safety officer transferred 10 days before the accident. The camera system had a 17-minute gap on the night Elias died. She placed the backup footage report on the table. This is from the insurance provider's secondary server. It shows Elias entering the north zone from the east entrance under pursuit. He was not careless. He was being chased. She placed the payment record. This shows a payment of $43,000 from Harlan Construction to Grant Whitmore, made in 2 installments in the 6 weeks after Elias's death. There is no consulting contract. There is no work product. The payment exists and the services do not. She looked at Grant. You sold your brother twice. Once when he died, and again when you tried to steal from his child. Grant's attorney started speaking. Lena continued. I have a witness, she said. Nurse Camille Reyes was on duty the night Elias was brought to the hospital. Elias Whitmore regained consciousness for approximately 4 minutes before he died. She paused. Lena had been prepared for the attorney to object on grounds of hearsay. She had not been prepared for what she already knew. 3 days before the hearing, Nurse Camille had called Mara in a shaking voice. Someone had left a photograph of her son's school taped to her apartment door. No note. No name, just the photograph. By morning, Mara had called Roman. Roman had said only one thing, very quietly, before he made 2 calls. No one who is willing to tell the truth gets to be silenced in this. Nurse Camille had called back that same afternoon. Her voice was still shaking. But she said, I'll testify. She placed the written statement on the table. Nurse Reyes documented what he said. He said, tell Lena. They knew. He said it twice. She paused. He knew. He had already told me what I needed to know. He just needed to make sure it got to me. The room was quiet. Lena placed one more document on the table. This is the full safety investigation report from a firm retained 2 weeks ago. It documents 3 structural deficiencies in the north scaffold. All 3 were present in the engineering drawings filed before construction. All 3 were flagged in Elias's written reports to his foreman. None appear in the official incident report. She looked at Harlan's attorney. You called my baby worthless because you knew his name would cost you everything. She closed the folder. His name is Elias, she said. And he was not worthless. His father wasn't either. Margaret Whitmore did not speak for the rest of the hearing. Grant's attorney asked for a recess. The recess was denied. By the end of the afternoon, the compensation had been confirmed for Lena and the child. Grant Whitmore was referred for investigation on the payment record. Victor Harlan's company was flagged for criminal safety investigation. The report filed by Harlan Construction on the night of Elias's death was officially classified as insufficient. Outside the hearing room, Victor Harlan's attorney was already on the phone. For the first time all afternoon, his voice was not polished. It was quiet, urgent, afraid. By evening, Harlan Construction's largest city contract had been suspended pending review. Victor Harlan had built his empire on clean reports. Now one widow had made the city read the dirty one aloud. Lena walked out of the hearing room, and Roman was in the corridor exactly where she had left him. Margaret Whitmore stood near the courtroom door. For the first time since Elias died, she had no paper to push across a table, no room arranged in her favor, no one looking away for her. Lena stopped in front of her. She did not speak immediately. She only looked at this woman who had called her son a burden. Then she placed one hand over her stomach, the way she had done in the mediation room 2 months ago, and said, "You called him a burden." Margaret's mouth tightened. "His name is Elias," Lena said. "And every time someone says it now, they will remember what you tried to steal." She walked past her. She did not look back. Roman was in the corridor exactly where she had left him. She stopped in front of him. She did not say anything. He looked at her for a moment. Then he went down on one knee on the courthouse floor. Not theatrical, not slow, just a man going to one knee because there was no other posture adequate to what he wanted to say. "I am sorry I found his name too late," he said. Lena looked at him. She did not cry. She was done with the kind of crying that came from being helpless. "Then pay him by making sure no one buries the truth again," she said. Roman stood. "I already started," he said quietly. 3 other workers, similar cases. Mara has the files." Lena was quiet. Then she said, "Good." She walked past him toward the exit. Roman followed at a distance that was not proprietary. He was not beside her. He was simply going the same way. 6 weeks later, in a hospital 3 miles from the courthouse where it had all begun, Lena Whitmore gave birth to a boy. He was 7 pounds and 4 ounces. He arrived at 4:17 in the morning after a labor that lasted 11 hours. And required, at one point, Lena to tell the nurse that she was absolutely fine, and would the nurse please stop asking and just hand her the ice chips. She named him Elias. Roman was in the corridor. He had been there for 9 hours. He had not said much. He had simply remained, which was its own kind of answer to a question no one had asked aloud. When the nurse opened the door and told him he could come in, if Lena agreed, Roman waited in the doorway. Lena looked at him from the bed, her son in her arms, exhausted and entirely present. "Come in," she said. He stood at the foot of the bed. He looked at the baby. He did not reach. He did not take. He looked at this small person who had Lena's eyes, and, somewhere in the set of his jaw, something that Roman would have said was familiar if he had let himself say it. "He has his father's name," Roman said. Now give him a world that deserves it. Lena looked at her son. I intend to, she said. Roman looked at the bandana folded in his coat pocket. He had been carrying it since the hospital. He took it out and placed it on the bedside table beside Lena's water cup. That should be his, he said, when he's old enough. Lena looked at it. He is not your debt, she said quietly. He is my son. I know. Then say it. Roman looked at her. He is not my debt, he said. He is your son. I am only here because his father once saved mine. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and touched the folded cloth on the table. Elias always said the things he repeated were the things he needed me to have later, she said. She looked at Roman. He saved your life. You saved his name. I think that's what he needed. Roman said nothing. He sat down in the chair beside the door, not beside her, not beside the bed, just inside the room. Present, not asking for anything. Baby Elias made a small sound and then went quiet again, and the hospital room held only the sound of breathing, and, outside the window, a city that did not know yet what had been returned to it. In the carrier, baby Elias opened his eyes for half a second. Too young to know the name he carried, but old enough to be living proof that it had not been erased. 3 months after that, Roman Vale established a legal fund for the families of workers killed in construction accidents involving suppressed safety reports. He did not name it after himself. He named it after no one. It was simply a fund, administered by Mara, that paid for lawyers and investigators and the cost of getting the truth out of places where it had been buried. Lena knew about it. She had been consulted on the structure. She was not on the board. She had been offered a role and had said she would think about it. She was thinking. In the meantime, she had a child who was learning to recognize her voice and a compensation settlement that had cleared the debts the Whitmores had once used to keep her quiet, and a small apartment with a window that got morning light. Roman came by twice, once to drop off paperwork, once because Mara had a question that required a signature, and Lena had asked them to come to her rather than the office. Both times he had been the same, correct, present, not claiming anything. The third time Lena opened the door, she found him on the steps outside her building, holding a box of books she had left at the office by accident. She looked at him. He looked at her. You could have had someone deliver those, she said. Yes, he said. She stepped back from the door. Come in, she said. He came in. He set the books on the table. He looked at the baby asleep in the carrier on the kitchen counter. He's bigger, Roman said. He eats constantly, Lena said. It's impressive. He has good instincts. Lena made tea. Roman sat at the table and looked at the books he had returned and did not try to make the silence into something it wasn't. After a while, Lena put a cup down in front of him and sat across the table. A debt of life should become a shelter, she said, not a chain. Roman looked at her. Yes, he said. Is that what you're building? The fund. That's what I'm trying to build. Lena wrapped her hands around her cup. Then I'll think about the board, she said. Roman said, take your time. Lena looked at him. Outside the window, the morning light was doing what it did. Coming in, settling on the table, on the cup, on the box of books, on the baby's small curled fist, on two people sitting across a table from each other, with something that was not yet a name but was becoming one. They called her baby worthless because they thought a child without a father had no power. They thought if they could silence a widow in a mediation room, there would be no record, no name, no debt outstanding. But when Roman Vale heard the father's name in a courthouse corridor, The city learned something the Whitmore family had spent 2 months trying to prevent. Some names are not inheritance. Some names are debts the powerful never finished paying. And some children are not burdens. They are the proof that the people who tried to erase their fathers were wrong about everything. If this story stayed with you, press like and leave a comment telling us which moment hit hardest. Subscribe for more stories about the people no one expected to fight back, and the ones who finally decided to stand beside them.